"It hurts, let's try again tonight," Korean Mafia boss whispered to his black virgin wife. Camille Adeyemi learned very early that silence could be louder than screams. It followed her now as she stood beneath crystal chandeliers in a private hall overlooking the Han River, dressed in white silk that felt far too heavy for her trembling body. The room was filled with powerful men in tailored suits, women draped in diamonds and guards stationed at every door, but no laughter, no warmth. Only respect laced with fear. This wasn't a wedding celebrated with joy. It was a contract sealed with vows. Camille kept her chin lifted the way her mother taught her, even as her pulse raced. She was far from home, far from the sun-soaked streets and familiar voices that once defined her life. Korea still felt like a beautifully dangerous dream she hadn't woken from. And today she was marrying the man whose name carried weight like a loaded gun. Kang Joon-hyuk, the Korean Mafia boss. He stood at the altar in a black suit cut to perfection, broad shoulders squared, expression carved from stone. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He simply existed, commanding, calm, lethal. When his dark eyes briefly met hers, Camille felt it in her bones. This man could destroy worlds. The officiant spoke. Camille barely heard the words. Her thoughts were too loud, memories of her father's worried face, the whispered warnings, the choice that hadn't truly been a choice at all. Marry him or lose everything. When Joon-hyuk said his vows, his voice was low and steady. No emotion. No hesitation. Just certainty. When it was her turn, Camille's voice shook, but she spoke clearly. "I do." The words echoed like a door locking behind her. The drive to the mansion was silent. Seoul's city lights blurred past the tinted windows as Camille sat beside her new husband, hands folded tightly in her lap. The car smelled faintly of leather and something deeper. Wood, smoke, power. Joon-hyuk didn't touch her. Didn't even look at her. Yet his presence filled the space until it felt impossible to breathe. Camille studied him from the corner of her eye. His profile was sharp, strong jaw, straight nose, a faint scar near his temple she hadn't noticed earlier. He looked untouchable. Distant. Like a man who lived in shadows and ruled them effortlessly. This is my husband, she thought, disbelief tightening her chest. The gates to the mansion opened slowly, revealing a fortress disguised as luxury. Guards bowed. Doors opened. Servants lowered their heads. Camille's heart pounded harder with every step inside. Their bedroom was massive, dark wood floors, soft lighting, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing the city below. It was beautiful. Intimidating. Too intimate for two strangers. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Camille froze. This was it. She stood near the bed, fingers twisting into the fabric of her gown, breath shallow. Every story she'd ever heard about men like him screamed in her head. Power. Control. Ownership. Joon-hyuk loosened his tie slowly, then removed his jacket. He moved with deliberate calm as if he were very aware of her fear, and unwilling to add to it. He finally turned to her. "You're scared?" he said not unkindly. The words broke something open inside her. Camille swallowed hard and nodded. Yes. He studied her face, her stiff posture, the way she flinched when he took a single step closer. Then, unexpectedly he stepped back. "You don't have to be," he continued. "Not tonight." Her eyes widened slightly. "I won't touch you unless you ask me to." The silence that followed was different now, less suffocating. "You can sleep," he added. "Nothing will happen." Camille searched his face for deception. Found none. Only restraint. He gestured toward the bed. "We share the room. Not the space." Relief flooded her so fast her knees almost gave out. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't respond, only turned off the lights on his side of the room. They lay down on opposite ends of the bed, a gulf of untouched silk between them. Camille stared at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. This man, feared by the city, hunted by enemies, had given her something she hadn't expected. Just as sleep finally crept in, Camille realized something that both comforted and frightened her. The most dangerous thing about Kang Joon-hyuk wasn't his power. Was his control. And somewhere in the darkness, she wondered if this marriage, born of fear, might one day become something far more complicated. Something far more dangerous. Something real. Morning arrived quietly in the Kang mansion. Camille woke before the sun, her body stiff with unfamiliarity, her mind slow to remember where she was. The ceiling above her was smooth and pale, nothing like the modest room she once called home. For a moment, peace settled over her, until reality rushed back in. She was married. Not to a dream, not to a lover, but to Kang Joon-hyuk. She turned her head carefully. The other side of the bed was empty. The sheets were untouched, neatly folded back as if he'd risen without making a sound. That alone unsettled her. She had slept deeply, too deeply, for a place rumored to be so dangerous. Camille sat up slowly, clutching the silk robe left for her heart pounding for reasons she couldn't explain. Had he already left? Or had he simply chosen distance again? She rose and padded toward the window. Seoul stretched endlessly below her, cold, powerful, beautiful. She felt small inside it. A soft knock sounded behind her. She nearly jumped. The door opened to reveal a female attendant who bowed politely. "Madam, breakfast is prepared. Chairman Kang is already awake." Chairman. Not husband. Not Joon-hyuk. The word reminded her of the world she had married into. Breakfast was served in a long dining room flooded with light. The table was large enough to seat 10, yet only 2 places were set. Joon-hyuk sat at the head, dressed impeccably in black, reading something on a tablet. He looked composed, untouched by sleep, untouched by nerves. Camille hesitated at the doorway. He looked up immediately. "You slept," he observed. It wasn't a question. "Yes," she replied, surprised by her own honesty. "Good." He set the tablet aside. "Sit." She did. Silence followed, but not an uncomfortable one. The staff moved quietly, placing food before her she barely recognized. Camille picked at it, nerves tightening her throat. Joon-hyuk noticed. "You don't have to eat if you're not hungry." She glanced up. "I am. Just overwhelmed." He nodded once as if that explained everything. "This house can feel heavy," he said. "You'll get used to it." "I don't want to get used to it," she almost said, but held her tongue. Instead, she asked the question that had burned in her chest all night. "Why did you agree to this marriage?" He didn't answer immediately. Joon-hyuk folded his hands together, studying her like a puzzle he hadn't yet decided to solve. "Because it was necessary," he said finally. "For you or for me?" she pressed gently. His eyes darkened, not with anger but something more complicated. "For both of us." The day unfolded slowly. Camille was given a tour of the mansion, its vast halls, secure wings, quiet gardens hidden behind high walls. Everywhere she went, people bowed. Guards watched. Doors locked and unlocked with precision. She felt watched but never threatened. Joon-hyuk didn't follow her closely. He let her walk ahead, let her ask questions, let her take her time. When she stopped to admire the koi pond, he waited. "Why do they bow to me?" she asked quietly. "Because you are my wife," he replied. "And because in this house, you outrank everyone but me." The words should have frightened her. Instead, they grounded her. Later, she found herself in the library, walls lined with books she never expected a man like him to own. History, philosophy, economics. "You read?" she asked, genuinely surprised. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I was not born powerful," he said. "I learned." She glanced at him, then really looked. The scar. The tiredness hidden beneath his control. The restraint. That night, as they returned to the bedroom, Camille realized something strange. She wasn't afraid of being alone with him anymore. She was afraid of wanting to stay. The second night passed much like the first. Distance. Silence. Space. But now the space felt intentional, not empty. Camille lay awake, staring into the dark, listening to his breathing again. Slower tonight. He wasn't pretending to sleep. "Joon-hyuk," she whispered before she could stop herself. "Yes." His voice was immediate. Alert. "Do you regret marrying me?" The question lingered in the air like a held breath. "No," he answered. "Why?" "Because you are gentle," she wanted him to say. "Because you see me?" Instead he said, "Because I protect what is mine." The word sent a chill through her, but not a cold one. She swallowed. "I don't want to be a burden." "You aren't." Pause. "Why are you so careful with me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. In the darkness, he turned slightly toward her, but didn't close the distance. "Because you're my wife," he said quietly. "Not my possession." Her chest tightened. That night, Camille fell asleep with the realization that terrified her more than danger ever could. The man she married out of fear was slowly becoming the man she trusted. And that, she sensed, would change everything. The third night arrived carrying a different weight. Camille felt it from the moment dusk painted the sky in deep blues and golds. Something had shifted, not in the house, not in the guards or routines, but inside her. The silence between her and Joon-hyuk was no longer empty. It was charged. Waiting. All day, her thoughts had circled him in ways that unsettled her. The way he stood slightly in front of her when visitors arrived. The way his eyes followed her movements without hovering. The way he never touched her, yet somehow made her feel seen. It frightened her. Not because she didn't want him to touch her, but because part of her was beginning to wish he would. Dinner that evening was quieter than usual. Not awkward, just restrained. Joon-hyuk watched her carefully as she ate more than she had the previous nights. Camille noticed the small details now, how he poured her water before his own, how his shoulders eased slightly when she smiled at something the attendant said. "You seem different tonight," he remarked. Camille's fingers tightened around her chopsticks. "Different how?" "Braver," he said honestly. Her heart skipped. "I don't feel brave." He regarded her for a long moment. "You are." The words lingered with her long after they left the dining room. The bedroom felt warmer that night. Camille stood near the bed, dressed in a simple nightgown, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Joon-hyuk moved more slowly than usual, as if sensing something delicate in the air. She watched him remove his jacket, fold it neatly. He didn't look at her while he did, giving her space to breathe, to decide. Her chest rose and fell unevenly. "I don't want to be afraid forever," she said suddenly. He froze. When he turned to her, his expression was serious. No teasing, no hunger. Only concern. "Camille," he said carefully, "you don't owe me anything." "I know," she replied quickly. "This is an obligation." She took a small step forward. Then another. "I want to try." The room seemed to hold its breath. Joon-hyuk closed the distance slowly, stopping inches away. He didn't touch her, not yet. "Look at me," he said softly. She did. His hands rose, hovering near her waist without contact. "If you say stop, I stop." Immediately. "I understand. And if you change your mind tomorrow, or next week, or never," he continued, voice steady, "I accept it." Her eyes burned. She nodded. "Okay." His first touch was barely there. A brush of his fingers against her arm. Warm. Careful. Camille's body reacted instantly, heart racing, breath hitching. She tensed despite herself. Joon-hyuk noticed. "We can slow down," he murmured. "No," she whispered, though fear fluttered in her chest. "Just, don't rush." "I won't." He guided her gently toward the bed, every movement deliberate, giving her time to process each step. His presence was overwhelming, not aggressive but intense. Like standing too close to a fire you weren't sure you could handle. When he kissed her, it was brief and soft. She gasped. The unfamiliar closeness made her nerves spiral. Her hands shook as she gripped the fabric of his shirt, grounding herself. "It's okay," he reassured quietly. "Breathe." But when things progressed even slightly, her body rebelled. Pain flashed sharp and unexpected, stealing the air from her lungs. Camille cried out softly. Joon-hyuk pulled away instantly. "Hey," his voice dropped. "I'm sorry. I should have known." She shook her head, tears slipping free. "I thought I was ready." "You are," he said firmly, drawing her into his arms without pressure. "Just not yet." She pressed her face against his chest, embarrassed, overwhelmed. "I ruined it," she whispered. "No," he held her securely, one hand resting protectively at her back. "You trusted me. That matters more than anything." Her tears soaked into his shirt, but he didn't move. Didn't rush her. Didn't let go. After a long moment, he leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for her. "It hurts. Let's try again tonight." She blinked up at him, confused. "Tonight?" she echoed softly. "When you decide," he clarified. "Not because you're scared. Not because you think you should. Only because you want to." Something in her chest cracked open. She nodded slowly, wiping her tears. "Thank you for stopping." "There was never a question," he replied. They lay down together afterward, not separated by distance this time but not tangled either. His arm rested near her, not around her, a silent promise of patience. Camille stared at the darkness, heart still racing. She hadn't crossed the line she feared. Instead, she discovered something far more dangerous. Kang Joon-hyuk could have taken control. But he chose restraint. And in doing so he made her want him, not out of fear, but out of trust. As sleep finally claimed her, Camille realized the truth with a mixture of fear and longing. The hardest part of this marriage wouldn't be surviving his world. It would be surrendering her heart to the man who refused to take it by force. Camille woke with a strange awareness of warmth. Not the physical kind, though the room was gently heated, but something deeper, something emotional, curling quietly in her chest. For the first time since the wedding, she hadn't woken with dread tightening her ribs. She turned slightly. Joon-hyuk lay on his back beside her, already awake, staring at the ceiling as if lost in thought. There was a careful space between them, intentional, respectful, but it was smaller than before. Neither of them spoke at first. The silence felt thoughtful. "I didn't mean to fall asleep," she said finally, her voice soft with mourning. "You needed rest," he replied without looking at her. I stayed still. That made her smile faintly. She sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. "You didn't have to. I wanted to." The simplicity of the statement lingered between them. The day unfolded differently than the ones before. Joon-hyuk canceled several meetings, something that caused visible unease among his men. Camille noticed the way they glanced at her, not with resentment but curiosity. Breakfast wasn't formal today. He led her into a smaller dining room, sunlight spilling across a modest table already set with food he clearly chose himself. "You cook?" she asked, surprised. "Sometimes," he replied. "When I don't trust anyone else with it." He served her first. Camille watched him carefully as he moved around the kitchen with quiet efficiency, sleeves rolled up, posture relaxed in a way she hadn't seen before. This wasn't the feared man whispered about in Seoul's underworld. This was just a man. They ate slowly, conversation coming easier now. "You don't ask many questions," she noted. "I don't want to push," he said. "You'll tell me what you want me to know." She hesitated. "And if I never do? Then I wait." Her fingers tightened around her cup. "No one has ever waited for me," she admitted. His gaze lifted to hers. "I can." Later he walked with her through the garden. High walls surrounded them, but inside was peace. Stone paths, carefully trimmed trees, a koi pond shimmering beneath the light. Camille paused near the water, watching the fish glide effortlessly beneath the surface. "They're beautiful," she murmured. "They survive," Joon-hyuk corrected gently. "That's why I keep them." She looked at him then. "Is that why you wanted this marriage? Survival?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I grew up learning that attachments are weaknesses," he said slowly. "But isolation is a different kind of death." Camille studied his face. "You don't seem weak to me." His jaw tightened. "You don't know what I am." She stepped closer, close enough that she could see the faint exhaustion beneath his control. "Tell me," she said softly. His eyes searched hers, hesitant, guarded. "I was taught violence before kindness," he admitted. "I learned control before love. People fear me because it keeps them alive." "And you?" she asked. "I fear becoming exactly what they believe I am." The honesty stole her breath. "You don't scare me," she said before she could stop herself. His eyes darkened, not with anger but something raw. "You should," he replied quietly. "But I don't." The words seemed to strike him harder than any threat. That evening, Camille noticed something else. When visitors arrived, dangerous men with sharp eyes and sharper words, Joon-hyuk positioned himself subtly in front of her. His hand hovered near hers without touching, a silent shield. When they left, she exhaled. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because," he answered without hesitation, "no one threatens what's under my protection." The word protection settled heavily in her chest. That night, in the bedroom, Camille changed without rushing, without panic. Joon-hyuk turned away respectfully, giving her privacy even now. As they lay down, she spoke into the darkness. "Joon-hyuk." "Yes." "Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask me anything." She swallowed. "Do you ever regret the life you chose?" He was silent for a long time. "I regret the people it took from me," he said finally. "But not the strength it gave me." She turned toward him. "And me?" Another pause. "You are not part of that life," he said carefully. "You are something else." Her heart thudded. "What am I?" In the darkness he turned slightly, still not touching her. "You are the one person in this house I don't want to control." The words wrapped around her like a vow. Camille closed her eyes, heart racing, not with fear but with the slow, terrifying realization that she was no longer just surviving this marriage. She was beginning to belong. And worse, she was beginning to care. As sleep claimed her, one thought echoed quietly through her mind. Learning his world had been easy. Learning his heart would be dangerous. The first sign of danger came quietly. Too quietly. Camille noticed it before anyone else. The way the guards doubled outside the mansion, the subtle shift in atmosphere, the tension humming beneath every polite exchange. Even the air felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were bracing for impact. Joon-hyuk didn't say anything at first. But Camille had learned his silences. He became sharper, more watchful. His phone never left his hand. Conversations stopped when she entered a room, not out of secrecy but protection. And that frightened her more than honesty ever could. The message arrived late in the afternoon. Camille was in the sitting room, reading, when Joon-hyuk entered with a darkness in his expression she hadn't seen before. Not calm. Not controlled. Violent. He stopped short when he saw her. "Camille," he said quietly. "Go to your room." Her heart skipped. What happened? He hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but she caught it. "Joon-hyuk." His jaw tightened. "A rival syndicate believes you are my weakness." The words chilled her blood. "They sent a message," he continued, voice low. "A threat. To you." Fear wrapped around her spine, but she forced herself to stay still. "Because of me?" "Because you are my wife," he corrected sharply. "And because they think hurting you will control me." She stood. "Will it?" His eyes snapped to hers. "No," he said with terrifying certainty. "It will end them." That night the mansion transformed. Security tightened. Doors locked. Armed men patrolled the grounds openly now. The illusion of safety was stripped away, replaced with the reality of Joon-hyuk's world. Camille sat alone in their bedroom, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She could hear raised voices through the walls, orders being given, plans unfolding. She had known this life was dangerous. But knowing and feeling were not the same. The door opened. Joon-hyuk stepped inside, his suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled up. There was blood on his knuckles. Camille's breath caught. "You're hurt," she whispered. "It's not mine." The words should have comforted her. They didn't. She stood slowly and approached him. Up close, she could see the tension etched into his face, the controlled fury barely restrained beneath his skin. "You promised to protect me," she said, her voice trembling. He cupped her face gently, so gently it broke her. "I will," he vowed. "Even if I burn the city down to do it." Tears filled her eyes, not from fear but from the weight of what loving him might cost. "I don't want you to lose yourself because of me," she said. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "I lost myself a long time ago," he replied quietly. "You are the only thing that reminds me I'm still human." Her chest tightened painfully. Later, after he washed the blood from his hands, they sat together on the edge of the bed. He didn't touch her, not yet, but his presence anchored her. "You should hate this," he said suddenly. "This danger. This life." She looked at him, really looked. "I hate the violence," she admitted. "I hate that people want to hurt us." "But," he prompted. "But I don't hate you." Something in his expression cracked. "You don't understand what that means," he murmured. "Then explain it to me." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I was raised to believe that love makes you weak," he said. "That it gets people killed. And yet," Camille said softly, "you're fighting because of it." He turned to her, eyes dark and searching. "That's why they'll use you against me." She reached for his hand, hesitant, unsure. He stilled when her fingers brushed his skin. "I'm not afraid of them," she said quietly. "I'm afraid of losing you." His hand closed around hers, firm, grounding. "You won't," he promised. "Not to them. Not to this world." She swallowed. "And not to yourself?" His grip tightened slightly. "That," he admitted, "is the harder promise." That night, Camille lay awake listening to the sounds of men guarding the halls, of footsteps and murmured codes. Joon-hyuk stayed close, closer than before, his presence a shield she could feel even without touch. For the first time, fear didn't push her away from him. It pulled her closer. Because loving Kang Joon-hyuk didn't just mean being protected by the devil of Seoul. It meant standing beside him when the gates of hell opened. And somewhere in the darkness, Camille realized the truth that would change everything. She was no longer just his weakness. She was his reason. Night fell heavier than before. Not with violence this time, but with the quiet aftermath of it. The mansion was still on high alert, yet the chaos of the earlier hours had settled into a tense calm. Guards remained stationed outside their door. Footsteps echoed less frequently. The storm had passed, but its shadow lingered. Inside the bedroom, only soft lamplight remained. Camille sat on the edge of the bed, knees drawn up, wrapped in one of Joon-hyuk's shirts. It smelled faintly of him, clean, steady, grounding. She hadn't chosen it consciously. Her body had reached for comfort before her mind could catch up. Joon-hyuk stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low Korean she couldn't fully understand. His tone was controlled, but she could hear the steel beneath it, the kind that bent men to his will. When he ended the call, he didn't turn right away. He rested one hand against the glass, shoulders heavy. "You're safe," he said finally. "For now." Camille nodded. "And you?" He turned, then meeting her eyes. "I will be." She studied him carefully. The danger had passed, but the tension remained, coiled tightly beneath his skin. This was the man the world feared. The man capable of terrible things. Yet when he looked at her, his expression softened. "Always. You should sleep," he said. She shook her head slowly. "Not yet." He hesitated. "Camille?" "I'm not scared," she interrupted quietly. "At least, not the way I was before." He stepped closer, cautious, as if approaching something fragile. "You don't have to be strong for me," he said. "I know," she replied. "I want to be honest." He waited. She took a breath. "Earlier, when I saw the blood on your hands, I realized something." His jaw tightened. "What?" "I realized that I trust you," she said softly. "Even when I don't understand your world." That stopped him completely. Trust. It wasn't a word men used with him. "You shouldn't," he said automatically. "But I do," she insisted. "You could have shut me out. You could have lied. You didn't." He moved closer now, standing just in front of her. "This world destroys innocent people. Then don't let it destroy us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Something unreadable flickered in his eyes. She reached for his hand. This time she didn't hesitate. He inhaled sharply but didn't pull away. "I know last time was difficult," she said quietly. "And I know you stopped because you care." "I stopped because I never want to hurt you," he replied. Her thumb brushed against his knuckles, still faintly bruised. "I'm choosing you," she said. "Not because I have to. Because I want to." The room seemed to hold its breath. Joon-hyuk lifted her hand slowly, pressing his lips to her knuckles. Gentle, reverent. "Then we go slowly," he murmured. "Slower than you think you need." She nodded. They lay down together, closer than before. Not rushed. Not pressured. Joon-hyuk stayed partially propped on one arm, giving her space, watching her face carefully, every breath, every shift of emotion. "Tell me if anything feels wrong," he said. "I will." He kissed her again, soft, unhurried. A question rather than a claim. Camille responded this time, her body relaxing gradually, trust replacing tension. The fear didn't vanish, but it loosened its grip. When uncertainty flickered across her face, he stopped immediately. "Still okay?" he asked. She nodded, though her voice trembled. "Just overwhelmed." "That's allowed," he said gently. He rested his forehead against hers, grounding her. "You're safe," he whispered. "You control this." Her breathing slowed. She didn't push herself further. Instead, she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. Strong. Alive. Human. They stayed like that for a long time. No demands. No expectations. Just closeness. Camille traced small, absent patterns against his shirt, feeling the warmth of him beneath her fingers. Joon-hyuk's arm rested loosely around her, not trapping, not claiming, simply present. "I used to think trust was weakness," he admitted quietly. "And now?" she asked. "And now," he said, "it feels like standing in the dark, knowing someone is there with you." She smiled faintly, eyes heavy with sleep. "I'm still scared," she confessed. "So am I," he replied. The honesty surprised her. "But we're not alone," he added. Camille closed her eyes, comforted by his words, by his presence, by the steady promise of patience. That night, she didn't fall asleep wondering if she would survive this marriage. She fell asleep believing that trust, slow, fragile, deliberate, might be the strongest weapon either of them had. And in the darkness, wrapped in his quiet protection, Camille understood something profound. They weren't trying to conquer each other anymore. They were learning how to stand together. The rain began after midnight. Soft at first, just a whisper against the windows, then heavier, steady, filling the silence with a rhythm that felt almost intimate. Camille lay awake beside Joon-hyuk, listening to it, aware of every inch of space between them, and how little of it remained now. She wasn't afraid tonight. Nervous, yes. Uncertain still. But fear no longer ruled her body the way it once had. Joon-hyuk sensed it before she spoke. He always did. "You're awake," he murmured into the darkness. "Yes." He turned slightly toward her, stopping short of touching. Even now he waited. The lamp by the bedside cast a soft glow across his face, strong features softened by exhaustion and something else she hadn't seen before this marriage. Oh. Camille swallowed, her heart pounding. I keep thinking about what you said. About what? About control, she replied quietly. About me deciding. He nodded slowly. You always decide. She took a breath that felt like crossing a line. I want to try again, she said. Not because I'm forcing myself. Because I don't want to run anymore. Joon-hyuk didn't move. For a terrifying second she thought she'd said too much. Then he spoke, his voice low and steady. Look at me. She did. His gaze searched her face carefully, not for desire, but for certainty. If this becomes too much, he said, you don't apologize. You don't explain. You just tell me. I know. And if tonight doesn't end the way you expect, he continued, that doesn't mean you failed. Her throat tightened. I'm scared it will hurt again. His expression softened completely. It might, he admitted. But I won't let you face that alone. He moved closer, slow enough that she could stop him at any moment. She didn't. His touch was warm, grounding, familiar now. Camille focused on her breathing, on the sound of rain, on the steady calm of him beside her. When uncertainty flickered across her face, he paused. Still with me? He asked quietly. Yes, she whispered. Just stay slow. I'm here, he promised. They moved together with patience earned through trust, not urgency. When tension returned, sharp, unexpected, Camille stiffened instinctively. Joon-hyuk stopped immediately. He leaned close, his forehead resting gently against hers. It hurts, he whispered, not as a command, but as an acknowledgement. Let's try again tonight. This time his voice wasn't asking her to endure. It was asking her to choose. Camille's breath trembled. Tears filled her eyes, not from pain, but from the overwhelming tenderness of being heard. She nodded. Okay, she whispered. He waited until her breathing steadied. Until her grip on his arm relaxed. Until the fear eased just enough to let something else take its place. Trust. The night didn't unfold perfectly. There were pauses. Soft laughter through tears. Moments when they stopped just to breathe together, to ground themselves in the reality of us instead of expectations. And when it finally felt right, when her body no longer fought the closeness, Camille realized something profound. She wasn't enduring the moment. She was present in it. Joon-hyuk stayed with her every second, murmuring reassurance, anchoring her when sensation threatened to overwhelm her. His strength wasn't in dominance, but in restraint. When it was over, he didn't move away. He gathered her gently into his arms, holding her like something precious, fragile, and fiercely protected. You did well, he murmured, not with pride but admiration. So did you, she whispered back. They lay together afterward, the rain still falling outside, the world beyond the walls momentarily distant and quiet. Camille rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, the same heart that ruled an empire built on fear. Yet with her, it beat softly. I didn't think it would feel like this, she admitted. Like what? Like safety, she said. His arm tightened slightly around her. I will spend my life proving that to you, he replied. Camille closed her eyes, exhaustion settling over her in waves, but beneath it, a calm she had never known. Tonight hadn't been about crossing a line. It had been about rewriting one. For the first time since she'd said I do, Camille understood the truth of her marriage. She wasn't trapped in the arms of a dangerous man. She was held by one who chose patience over power, and who had just given her something far more rare than protection. He had given her his trust. And as sleep claimed her, wrapped in his quiet strength, Camille knew. This night had changed everything. Morning arrived slowly, as if the world itself hesitated to disturb them. Soft light filtered through the curtains, painting the room in pale gold. The rain had stopped sometime in the night, leaving behind a calm that felt earned, fragile but real. Camille woke curled against warmth. For a brief, blissful moment she didn't remember fear, contracts, or danger. She only felt the steady rise and fall beneath her cheek, the secure weight of an arm resting protectively at her back. Joon-hyuk was still asleep. She studied him quietly, taking in the details she'd never allowed herself to notice before. The faint crease between his brows even at rest, the scar near his temple softened by morning light, the way his hand remained open against her as if even in sleep he refused to cage her. This was the man the city feared. And yet, with her he had been patient, gentle, human. The realization filled her chest with something dangerously close to love. He stirred when she shifted, eyes opening instantly, alert, instinctive. Then he saw her. And the sharpness faded. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. She smiled shyly. "Morning." He searched her face, concern flickering beneath the calm. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "I am." Only then did he relax, exhaling softly. "That's all I needed to hear." He brushed his thumb lightly along her arm, an unconscious, tender gesture that made her heart flutter. "I didn't know it could feel like this," she admitted. "Like what?" "Like I belong here," she said. "Not because I was placed here, but because I chose to stay." Joon-hyuk sat up slightly, careful not to disturb her too much. "You always have that choice," he said firmly. "This marriage, this house, it only works if you want it." She met his gaze. "And if I want you?" The question hung between them, vulnerable and brave. His expression shifted, something deep and fierce breaking through his control. "Then," he said quietly, "I am yours. Completely." Breakfast that morning was different. When they entered the dining room together, conversations stopped. Guards straightened. Men who had never bowed to anyone lowered their heads. Joon-hyuk didn't notice. His attention was entirely on Camille. He pulled out her chair, poured her tea, sat beside her, not at the head of the table. The message was unmistakable. One of his senior men hesitated before speaking. "Chairman, the rival syndicate has withdrawn. Permanently." Joon-hyuk's gaze never left Camille. "Good," he said calmly. "Make sure they remember why." "Yes, sir." Camille swallowed, tension flickering, but Joon-hyuk reached for her hand beneath the table, grounding her. She squeezed back. He smiled just slightly. Later, as they walked through the garden, Camille noticed how the staff looked at her now. Not as an outsider. Not as a bargaining chip. But as something sacred. "Why are they looking at me like that?" she asked softly. "Because," Joon-hyuk replied, "they know something they didn't before." "What's that?" "That you are not just my wife," he said. "You are my weakness, and my strength." She stopped walking, turning to face him. "That's dangerous," she said gently. "Yes," he agreed. "But I've built an empire on dangerous things." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're impossible." "And you," he said, stepping closer, "are the only person who has ever stood in front of me without fear." She reached up, touching his chest. "I was afraid." "I know. I just chose not to run." His hand covered hers. "Then neither will I." That night, as the city lights glittered beyond the windows, Camille stood beside him on the balcony, wrapped in his jacket, the cool air brushing her skin. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple, "we build something new." "Even in your world?" "Especially in my world," he replied. "Because you are in it." She leaned into him, comforted by the certainty in his voice. For the rest of the world, Kang Joon-hyuk would always be the devil of Seoul, the man whispered about in fear and legend. But to Camille, he was the man who stopped when it hurt. The man who waited. The man who chose love over control. And as she looked out over the city that had tried to swallow her whole, Camille understood her truth at last. She was no longer a bride trapped by circumstance. She was a queen, standing beside her king. Not because she was owned, but because she was chosen.